Hi guys, and welcome to my review for a product from Technics, which is part of their Lightyear series. From what I was able to understand, these products are, let's say, a more budget friendly series that they have. At least, if I'm wrong, please correct me. And the Star City 5 Pro, from what I was also able to gather, began life as the Star City 5, and now this Pro version is basically a retune, a readjustment, a refresh to that initial version. Let's put it that way. The tuning apparently was done by an ex-Sony engineer, and even the actual look of the IM, it's got a look which is very, let's say, uncommon. And has, you could call it some elements of some Sony products in it. It's got that vibe going for it. Anyway, it's a 1+2 hybrid. Okay, this is the sleeve where they mention some of the characteristics. 24 ohm impedance. They talk about a sensitivity of around 104 dBs. So at least on paper it seems like it's going to be a relatively easy IM to power. This is the sleeve, as I was mentioning. When you open up the box, it's got a nice presentation actually. When you consider this costs about $85–90 more or less, it's actually a pretty competitive price. It was a little bit more expensive when it initially came out, but I've seen it around $90 price bracket right now. That over there, the case comes over here. It's got some decent tips, some paperwork there, and that's basically it. I mean, it's a simple package, but it's nicely put together, and it looks the business. I mean, Technics doesn't go down that road of the waifus and so on and so forth, which I've got nothing against, whatever, to each his own. But they give a very classy, very nice presentation always to their products. Anyway, that's the case. These are the IMs. This is the cable. The actual cable, you know what? It's not a bad cable. It's just a pity that it, especially the section after the cinch, has a tendency of tangling up a little bit more than what I would like. The actual cable in itself is not bad. It's a 3.5 termination. It would have been nice. I mean, it is available. We have seen it being done by the brands. It would have been nice if it was available in a 4.4 as well. But the truth is, it's actually quite an easy IM to power. So I guess that's the reason why they didn't bother with doing it in a 4.4 termination in terms of the cable. As for the IM, like I said, it's got a very unusual look to it. It's not got the typical look that we see. And if you look at it and you look at some of the products from Sony, I guess you can see some DNA there. It's an MMCX connector, which is a pity, to be honest. It's honestly really the only thing that I have an issue with. Relatively light shell as well. Internally, they mention it's got an LCP driver that has been sourced from Japan apparently, and then it's got two BAs, which they say they are Danish, so I would assume they are Sonians. It's got two BAs, one for the mids and one for the highs, and the whole, you know what, the IM actually looks way more well put together and way more impressive than what the price would make you believe. Fair enough, in the AliExpress store they do say it's got a 30% discount right now, and that's why it's centered at around this $90 give or take price. But it looks the part. Let me make that clear. The Star City 5 Pro looks really impressive. It looks really nice. It looks solid. I actually started using the stock tips initially, but they are a little bit on the soft side, and the only reason why I actually swapped over to these KB ears is just because they got a little more solidity to their outer silicone layer here, so they don't break seal as easily as the stock ones. That's the only reason why. In terms of the actual frequency response of one and the other, basically it's the same. I'll show it to you later when I show you the graphs. Anyway, fit is actually quite nice. Fits very nicely, although it's an MMCX, it's not too tight, so it allows for a little bit of play here of the cable, for it to go into my ear nicely and insert itself nice and deep. So basically that's it. I mean, in terms of its physical aspect of, the material side of things, it's a nicely built IM, fits nicely, got no complaints. Like I said, the cable, it would have been nice if at least this part here, the end part which comes onto the IM, wouldn't tangle up as much. It would have been nice, like I mentioned, okay, I guess they could have made it a modular cable or make it at least available in a 4.4, but again, it's not really necessary because, it's actually quite a surprisingly easy IM to drive. Alright, that's the 5 Pro there. What did I then select? Well, I used my Q15, I used my Snowy Night, and I used as well the new Shanling H2. And although there were slight differences, more from the Q15 to then these two, because these are using the 43198 from Cyrus Logic, so there's a bit of commonality here in terms of the sound. And like I said, although you could notice a little bit of a difference to the sound with the AKM here on the Q15, the reality is this: any one of these sounded fantastic. I briefly used as well the M15, and it sounded also very nice, no complaints there. And I used as well the TP30, which also sounded fantastic. But I don't know, it just gelled with me more, the R-Full. And when I mentioned the R-Full, it could have been the TP50 from EPZ and the Q15 and the H2. This tonality, this combination here for me kind of worked more to my pleasure. If I actually have to say which would be the most make sense combination, the Snowy Night, or then maybe the TP50 with the Star 65 Pro would probably be the most make sense combination. First of all, because of the price. Although, truth be told, the H2 has actually got a very, very competitive price. This particular unit, I got it from HIFIGO, and this is going for about $160, which, when you consider it, okay, it's big, it's not a dongle, but when you consider the added versatility that this actually brings, you know what? Worth considering. The size is not as cumbersome as you would think, at least in my opinion. Anyway, that's what I used in terms of power the Star 65 Pro. And then I selected here some IEMs to again help position the Star 65 Pro. There are some IEMs here which are previous, let's say, references in the market. Some of them were very popular, some of them not so much, but overall all of them excuse me, are IEMs which I think are deserving of being here, and I thought that would make an interesting selection to put up against, to pitch up against the Star 65 Pro. So I've got here the Fudu from Tangzhou. That's probably the cheapest out of all of them. It goes for about $80. I've seen it now during these last couple of days with some sales going down to $65. So that's a very, very solidly done IEM. Next to that, I've got an IEM which is from GS Audio. They initially had the GD 3A and 3B, and then the 3C and the 3D. The 3A and the 3C, which is what I have here in front of us, is the ones that has a little bit more extension. And for a long time, when we're talking back in the time of the Tropoan, the Melee, actually even the Olina, more about the Olina. If the Olina was the reference of a single DD at around $100, the GS Audio 3A and then the 3C, which was slightly improved, were the reference of a hybrid of 1+2 hybrid at around the same price. So I've got that there. I've got the another Rose Technics, which is the QT7 Pro 2. I've got here something which not a lot of people know about, which is the BGVP THHIFI red face. Very nice IEM, very nice IEM, and it's a pity that it didn't really get much love. Next to that, another IEM as well that went very much under the radar, particularly because when it did come out, the price was absolutely absurd, which is the Whizzer, the HE3 AL, and then finally the Yume 2. Obviously, the price range here is varied. But you'll understand soon enough why I thought that the price wasn't really an obstacle. Anyway, but going just to mention the prices, that's about 80, like I mentioned, 65 on discount. This is about $100, hasn't changed much. The QT7 initially was more expensive, but now you can find it at around 129. The red face as well, the same thing. It was closer to $200, but now you can find it for about 130. The AL was $200+. Now you can find it recently. Actually, this unit I bought it recently from Whizzer on some sales. I think maybe in February sometime. This is $100, just over $100. The Yume 2 about $170 more or less, and then the Star 35 Pro about 90, give or take. So of course, you could be saying to yourself, oh, but you're comparing this with a $200 IEM or IEMs which are so much more expensive. Well, I'm comparing it because to cut a little bit, I know, spoiler, the Star 35 Pro is a very solidly done IEM in the story. It is very solidly done. Not only because of the aspect of the build, which is properly done, it's perfect, but sound-wise, I was really impressed. Yes, there are a few things that I will say need to be paid attention to, but these are things which you usually do anyway, which is you make sure that the tip that you are using is the ideal tip. You make sure as well that whatever source you're using in terms of DAC, amp, dongle, whatever, is also ideal. And I would say definitely this benefits from something which has either a Cirrus Logic type of internal or AKM type of internal. Colorfly, the M1P would, for example, be another really good example. I wouldn't, for example, use this with the Martha, although the Martha, the S9 has got its place. I believe that in this particular case, the Martha would maybe not be the ideal because of the more brighter type of signature that it has. It can potentially exacerbate an area of the frequencies here of the Star 35 Pro, which is around the 6-7, between 5 and 6-7 Ks kilohertz. It gets a little bit strong, and if you're not having if you don't have maybe a warmer source or warmer amp behind it, it can maybe get to a point where some of you might find it aggressive. I particularly didn't find it, and I went through a whole bunch of music from anywhere from Riviera by Bob Zop to La Belle Dans Sans Regrets or Sans Remorse, whichever you want to say it, by Chris Botti, Elephant by Carol Duboc. I really threw a whole bunch of things at the Star City. I didn't really, Carnival by Kanye West and Ty Dolla $ign, Do It in Luxury by Chris Botti, Feel So Good from Diane Reeves, Believe Me by Dean Brown. It is actually quite impressive how versatile the Star City is. Breaking it down in terms of the sound, frequency, and so on and so forth. Bass, very nicely done. Way more bass in terms of its sub-bass response than what I was expecting, to be honest, and what the graph might even lead you to believe. It's got a lot of sub-bass. It's got a lot of capability of really rumbling. It's not a bass head IM. It's not a it's very high quality bass that we're getting here. It's nice, it's clean, it's fast enough, it's dynamic, it doesn't bleed into the mids, or at least in a way that I would consider detrimental in any aspect. It transitions into the mids fine. Male vocals, female vocals are really well done. I would say maybe the male vocals are the better execution. The female vocals, like I said, in particular instances can come out a little bit, start getting a little bit intense. Not that I noticed it, but I can perceive it, for those that still have their hearing abilities which are far behind my far better than mine. I mean, the reality is I'm getting older, so obviously the higher frequencies are not or my perception of high frequencies are not what they used to be. And then certain instruments like trumpets and so on and so forth can on occasion as well get just a tad hot, not in an aggressive manner, but a tad hot. I would say that you would notice that more in terms of how it scales. Although the Star City does scale well, I found that scaling was not consistent. And what I mean by that is in certain songs, like for example, let's take Lonely by Hablot Brown, or let's take Magnetic Lies by Malia. It scales in a much more coherent manner than, for example, Feel So Good by Diane Reeves, or Up and Up from Jeff Ryan. Those songs with the Star City, the way that as you increase the volume, the way that the frequencies start coming out is a little bit less in control, and that's where I found then that sometimes I could perceive that things could get a little bit out of hand, a little bit overly intense. But guys, I'm being hard now in a way, just for you guys to understand that in any way or form was it bad. And when I started actually comparing it with how the other IEMs were doing it, they all had their issues. And overall, the Star City 5 was having actually less than what I was expecting. And when you consider the price, you have to give it kudos. That's the reality. Anyway. So bass, mids, fine. Treble, it's got a nice treble, but because of that extra energy that it's got in that area there of 5, 6, 7K, I found that maybe the higher frequency sometimes just had that little bit extra BA tonality that could have been unnecessary. It could have been, could have been disposed of, and that wouldn't mean any loss of detail or any loss of micro details or any loss of ability to be resolving or anything of the sort. In terms of its technicalities, it's not that the soundstage was bad. I just found it a little bit more cozy than what I would have ideally liked. Obviously, when I'm comparing it to something like the Yume 2 has got a significantly better ability in terms of soundstage, significantly better in terms of imaging. It's noticeable. That's the reality. It's noticeable. But then again, that's twice the price. You could actually say that for what this costs, it didn't do too bad. Detail retrieval was very good as well. Nothing to be pointed out there. Resolution was fine. Timbre and tonality, again, very nice. It's you listen to the Star City, and it's just a nice listen. It's a very agreeable listen. It's something like the Fudu. The Fudu, I know that not so many people agreed with it because of the way that it was tuned, and there is a lot of differences here in the overall tuning of all of these IEMs. But the Fudu is a nice, warmer tonality. It's got a nice, warm kind of tuning to it, and I particularly find it very appealing. It's got that kind of old school, organic type of sound, which is very nice. By comparison, for example, when we take the GD3C, it's not that the GD3C doesn't sound good. It sounds good. But the GD3C actually sounds more closed and more recessed in the mids to upper mids than, for example, the Fudu, which has been tuned in a manner which is, let's say, brightish, and it has got a big bass, which is something that the GD3C at least doesn't apparently have, when you look at the graph. But anyway, in terms of its technicalities, it's solid. Considering the price, it's solid. There's nothing there to complain. The takeaway technicality, I would say, probably would be how resolving, how it's capable of fetching all the little details it is, even though that does sometimes mean that the soundstage and the imaging are maybe just left behind. I think it seduces you by that, and gives you the illusion that then it can create a big sound stage, when in reality it's just the ability that it has to be very resolving, very detailed, that I think is the main feature there. I would say that the main thing. And then I would say that as well, the timbre and the tonality are overall very nice, very agreeable, very easy to, it's a very easy IM to listen to. Going then against, or trying to position it against some of these IMs, or well, not some, against these IMs that I selected. I'm not going to go in the order that I have here. I'm going to go in the order by the ones that I think get beaten, if that is the best word to use here, with more ease by the Star 35. The first one is the GD3C. I like the GD3C, I really do. It's an IM that's been out as well for a while now. It's a nice IM, but it's due now for an overhaul or a retune or something. And the Star 35, it's better. It's got a more pleasant sound. You listen to one and the other, and you don't notice that something is missing in the mids and mids up to mids to upper mids transition, like you notice on the GD3C. On its own, you don't think that, and it does mean that it's not harsh or sibilant or anything like this. But when you compare one and the other, you notice that this is significantly more detailed. Compared to the QT7 Pro 2, it's not a fair comparison because they've been tuned in two completely different manners. That's very much a V-shaped IM by comparison. And it sounds a little bit more, it sounds more colored. But it's a well-executed colored IM. Although it's not by comparison, this is more audiophile. Let's put it that way. But that's fun and it's engaging. It's got a very good driver. The dynamic driver, they're actually surprisingly good. It's just been tuned in a manner which I think was over enthusiastic. If it had been tuned just tamed down a little bit, I think it would have been better. And when you consider the price, obviously, okay, yes, they've been tuned in different manners, different crowds, but the overall versatility of one versus the other, this is more versatile. And when you factor in as well that it's cheaper, I would say the Star City is the one that makes the most sense to buy. Compared to the Whizzer, let's put it this way: if you get the Whizzer for $100 like I did, the Whizzer is a very solid IM. It's got a nice agreeable sound. They very much trade blows. I would say they side grades to each other. They've got a very similar vibe going, funny enough. So these two are side grades. Compared to the red face, if you're going to be paying the normal price that it usually is, no, then it doesn't make sense. If you get it, like I said, if you can get it for like $120, $130, which is the price that you can be sometimes found, and I've even seen it lower. I've seen it a couple of months ago. BGVP was running a special on it, and it was down to $109. And for that amount of money, honestly, it's an IM that, again, it's got a very similar vibe here to the Star City. The bass is significantly more girthy. It's got more energy in the bass. The quality is about the same. It's got definitely more energy, and I'm actually glad that it's got that energy, because it saves it from an area there in the frequency response of like 6, 7, 8K, which is a little bit overly energetic as well. And if it didn't have the amount of bass that it has, it could maybe become a bit of a fatiguing IM. But overall, as it's been done and as how it's tuned, and it's a very, very solidly done IM as well. So I would say, again, they are good side grades to each other. If you have that, I don't think getting the Star City makes sense. And if you're in the position of wanting to buy one or the other, this would make more sense because it's significantly cheaper. Unless you can find that like for a really good deal, then I would say yes, go for that, because it's got a very solid build and everything. So that's the GD3 out of the way, which gets beaten by the Star City 5. The QT7, like I said, it gets beaten because it's the one that makes the most sense in terms of value, but the tuning is red. It's more V-shaped, while this is, I would say, maybe a warm, brighter tuning. Okay, the Whizzer and the red face are side grades. They've got similar vibes here going in terms of sound. Compared to, well, I'm gonna get the Yume 2 out of the way. Compared to the Yume 2, the Yume 2 is a better IM. The Yume 2 is the most audiophile IM out of this whole bunch. Now, having said that, I was actually quite surprised, because when I listened to the Star City 5 Pro the very first time, and I was going through some songs, I was trying to think, I've heard IMs that sounded like this, and one of the IMs that came to mind was the Red Face, and I wasn't wrong, the Red Face does have. And then, the Fudo, and again, the Fudo was one of the IMs that again proved itself to have a somewhat similar DNA. The other one that I was very quick to think about was the Yume 2, and the biggest difference really between the Yume 2 and the Red Face is the Yume 2's got a more forward sounding mids, and that opens up the vocals, and of course there's a better execution, there's a more coherent, more balanced execution of the mids. Now, if in fact there's some Sonians in there on the Star City 5, like they mentioned in the box, or rather in the literature on the internet and on their AliExpress store, that has Sonians. So I guess that could be one of the reasons. That could be part of the reason why this sounds so good, because it does. It sounds genuinely good. I mean, like I said, if that energy there in the treble had just been lowered a little bit, that feeling of that PA timbre could have been completely eliminated, and this would have meant maybe overall a more solid or an even more solid opinion about the Star City 5, because it would be playing with IMs which are then way up in its price point than the Star City. Compared to the Fudo, again, very similar vibes. Where you do notice that the Star City does do better is in the upper mids and the treble than the Fudo. The Fudo plays it safe, plays it more restrained, no harshness, no sibilance, no nothing, and it's been very well done. So you could even at times almost say that it's just a single driver that's inside there, while here, no, you do notice that there is more than one driver. Not so much, like I said, between the bass driver, the DD, and the mid BA, but the high frequency BA, you notice that there's more than one driver there, and I would say that there are side grades to each other. If you have a Fudo, I think it wouldn't be out of context to maybe complement it with the Star City. I don't think, but it doesn't have to be. If you are going to choose between one or the other, you won't go wrong with either. Maybe if you want a little bit more detail, I would say that this here would probably be the more versatile choice. But honestly, you can't really go wrong with either one. And I guess that's basically it, guys. I mean, like I said, it's an IM which surprised me. It shoots way above its price point in terms of the performance that it can give. I mean, I don't wanna say much here, but the Star City 5 beat quite a few OnePlus 4s that are out there at a similar price and a little bit more expensive. And I know this because I'm momentarily let me just get it and listen to it. And so I always try to compare IMs with similar configurations. That's why I don't have any OnePlus 4 years. But by saying that, I'm already attesting to how good this IM is, because it is genuinely good. The point, or the biggest problem here is that we can't go out and buy every single good IM that we have. It's just it's not feasible. But if you are in the market for something which stands out by being slightly different and has got what seems to be a very solid assembly of material in terms of the hardware, the drivers and this is a very solid option. Very solid. You won't disappoint. The other IEMs, yeah, the Yume 2, it's one of those IEMs that I think, if you're really serious about sound and you want like a kind of a reference of a OnePlus 2 that is like the OnePlus 2, that's something that has to be there. I mean, I know that a lot of people prefer the original Yume or the collaboration that was then done with the with Clinical, or then lately there was another retune of the original Yume with Angel Ears. I personally feel that the best one, unquestionably, out of the 4 Yumes that are available, is the Yume 2. And for that reason alone, I think, if you are a serious audiophile, it's an IM that you should own. Okay. As for the others, I mean, the IM here that I really think didn't get the deserved attention that it should have gotten is the red face. Honestly, the red face, very, very solid IM. Anyway, guys, let me show you now quickly the graphs and stop here the ranting and wrap this up. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section here for the Star City 5 Pro. This is the graph of the Star City 5 Pro. As you can see, really nicely done bass, gliding style, basically no bleeding to the mids, very nicely. The pinna gain starts at about 1k, peaks at about 2.5. It's got about 7 dBs of gain into the bass, about 8 dB of gains into the pinna. It's got a little bit of a peak here close to 4.5, and then it's this area here of around 6, 7, 8k that's a little bit of a can be a little bit of a sore tooth for some of you. For me particularly, I didn't find it an issue, and overall, like I said earlier, I really enjoyed the sound of the 5 Pro. It's a very easy to listen to IM, and like no real issues. Okay, compared here to the GD3C, the bass for the most part is the same, but because the GD3C has got less energy here in this area of the upper mids, and overall the treble as well to a certain extent, it just sounds a little bit darker, a little bit less detailed. There is a certain similarity. I mean, this extra amount of sub bass energy, I didn't really notice it, to be honest with you, but you do notice that it's a darker sounding IM, and the Star City 5 Pro is just a better overall IM. It's just a nicer sounding IM. So that's that one out of the way. The next one I'm going to show you now is the Whizzer, and the Whizzer, as I mentioned earlier, actually has got a very similar style of vibe or sound as well in terms of the bass, very similar. It's just got this earlier pinna, which peaks at 2, a little bit more energy, a little bit more forward in the vocals, but overall it's nicely done. It doesn't have this issue here. It's better executed here in the treble area, smoother. It just sounds more forward in essence, like I was saying, and obviously being an IM that used to cost what it used to cost, it's kind of is it a $200 plus IM? No, it's not. And with today's market and the Star City in particular, like we have here, you can see that you can get better executions of a similar sound. We have one here in front of us. But if you can get it for a deal, why not? Let's put it that way. The next one I'm going to show you now is the QT7. And the QT7, I mean, I've normalized all the graphs at 500 Hz, and the QT7 is definitely a more V-shaped IM. There's more bleed into the mids. It just sounds overall thicker. Although it's also got that similar peak there at like the 6-7k area, you don't notice it as much because of the fact that it's got so much bass energy, especially mid bass, that it just takes away any possible issue that might occur there in terms of bass gains, about 11 dBs as well for the same thing so it's definitely a V-shaped IM. Look, it's the polar opposite in terms of overall balance, in terms compared with the Star City. The Star City, you could consider it more audiophile, so that's the Star City with the okay. Now let's compare it here with the with the red face, exactly, the BGVP THHIFI red face. The THHIFI, okay, normalized at 500 Hz. And again, you can see certain vibes are similar in terms of the gain that we have here for the bass and for the pinna gain. We're talking about a bass gain of around 10 dBs. Same thing for the pinna. So by all intents and purposes, a V-shaped signature. But the interesting thing here about the THHIFI is you could consider it a tuck style bass. It's not a gliding, it tucks, and it's flat by 300 hertz basically, so no bleed. And this is slightly more forward in terms of the mids to upper mids, so the vocals are a little bit more forward. The piano gain also does start earlier, and it is just the right amount of balance in terms of forwardness to make it a very, at least for me and with my music, a very agreeable listen. It's very easy to listen. The issue with it is just this part here, but because you got quite a bit of nice energy coming from behind, it does help, you know, control this peakiness here in the treble. Nice sensation of space, of air, of sound stage, definitely. So that's the THHIFI done. We've done the Whizzer, we've done the GS Audio. Let's do now the Fudo, which is number 10. There we go, Fudo. The Fudo, definitely you notice that it's got a thicker bass. It's not a better quality bass. No, it's just got a little bit more thickness, more noticeable in terms of the mid bass than necessarily the sub bass. Basically, again, no bleed into the mids. The gain on the bass is once more about 10 dBs, but it's the gain of the piano which is a little bit less, and so the sound, or the overall signature, we're talking about 7 dBs of piano gain. So the overall signature is a warmer sounding IM because of this bass here that is a little bit more overpowering. While on the Star 35, there's kind of a balance between the two extremes. You know, okay, here we have a definite tendency of the bass being the more powerful one. But like I said, the interesting thing is that although the bass is the more powerful, and yes, there is more bass energy, I didn't find that the quality of it was more. And in terms of like that sub bass extension, I found it to be on par with the Star 35. So the Fudo and the Star 35 were very similar in that aspect. But look, a nice sounding IM, a nice, they are nice side grades to each other, like I mentioned earlier. So that's, let me see if I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, the C Audio finally, number 12. And finally the C Audio, the Yume 2. Very similar bass execution. And then it's this area of the upper mids and treble. It's so well done, and that forwardness of the mids, it just makes for a way more audiophile type of presentation, let's put it that way. I mean, the gain of the bass, we're talking roughly 7 dBs, a little bit more again into the mids. So the balance that they've struck here on the Yume 2 is actually very similar to the balance that we have on the Star 35 Pro. The only difference that the difference that exists here that's more significant is that while the piano gain on the Star City starts at about 5, on the Yume 2 it starts significantly earlier. You could say that the piano gain starts at about 650 hertz, and this forwardness, you know, does make the vocals more forward, the female vocals especially. But because of the way that it's been done in a very progressive manner, not so abrupt like you see on some others, like for example the case here of the Whizzer. The Whizzer's got a very abrupt piano gain, it rises very sharply. So because it's kind of, you could say, a gliding kind of style of piano gain, it just sounds very smooth, very correct. And then the whole thing, yeah, the upper mids and the treble, and then that extension past 10K just conveys in terms of sound stage and imaging, and it's a different league of an IM. It really is. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the Star 35 Pro because it cannot be taken. It's worthy. It's a very worthy IM. But the Yume 2 is just a more polished IM. But, you know, to be fair, and not wanting to say that one is now the better than the other, I would say that these two are really good side grades to each other. You know, they are both very well executed in the tuning style that was adopted, and I think they would complement each other very nicely. Okay. And that's it, guys. I mean, there's really not much more that I can say. I mean, the Star City is definitely, at least for me, is a more solid IM than the QT7 QT7 Pro 2. You know, however, that may come across. I feel that this is a better IM overall in terms of its versatility and everything. And that's that. I mean, if you have the opportunity to listen to it, I think it's the ideal. If you have some of these IMs that I've mentioned here, I think it will be already a good way of you positioning the Star 35 Pro and seeing whether or not it's worthwhile getting it. Obviously, if you do think about it, now it's probably as good time as any, again, with the discounts that have been going. So check it out, guys. As always, like and subscribe. Any questions you might have, please feel free to ask me. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.